What's going on, everybody? Zera back with another glorious video. This video is about to be ridiculously helpful for those of you that are going to be questing or leveling, or both, because there are different ways to level, dungeoning and raiding on a very small scale. These are going to be tips and tricks episode number 3. Now, there is going to be at least 5 of these, potentially 6. This one might actually end up being like a list of 20 items, but these are the first 10 that came to mind. Again, there may be more later. I'm not sure yet. It's kind of one of those things that just evolves over time. You have thoughts come to your mind as you're developing and watching content, and you start thinking really outside the box. Again, I don't have Classic Beta, but since it's ending, my hopes of having one of it come to my way kind of dies, so my only ability to gain access to the actual Classic as of right now is the stress test. There's one coming up in a couple weeks, so be looking forward to that. I'll be testing a lot of things that I've got on my mind, and I'll be bringing a lot more content for you guys that's fresh and ready that will make sure you're primed and ready for Classic's launch. But without any further ado, let's dive right in with tip number 1. Getting to 60 is a marathon. This is not a sprint. You don't want to ruin the experience for yourself, because unless you're a speed leveler or you're just pushing really hard the first 2 weeks so you can get to 60 ASAP, take the opportunity, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance that you're going to have to really just relish the fact that this is Classic. Vanilla WoW has been reimagined in modern day. So take advantage of this opportunity and don't pass it. Don't pass it up. Don't let it pass you by. Enjoy the leveling experience. Don't try to sprint to 60 unless that's actually something that you and your friends are wanting to do. I'm not saying not to do it per se. I just mean if you have an option, I would encourage you very much, if at the very least you want to push really hard on one toon, go back and re-level a different toon, maybe an alt during your off days, or during the days that your friends aren't online, or maybe, you know, before you start streaming or before your raid or whatever. Just take the time to enjoy the story. I know that the quests in Classic are not as in-depth, they're not as well designed, they're not as intuitive as, say, modern WoW is, but that in and of itself is the beauty of the design of Classic. The fact that it's so chaotic and it doesn't flow necessarily well, leads you to bring a sense of reality to the actual story, to the actual journey. Because stories in Classic are not about the big heroes. They're not about Jaina. They're not about Garrosh or Thrall or whatever else, Anduin or otherwise. The stories are really about the locals in that area having issues, having problems, having concerns, having needs that need to be met, and you are just the wandering hero, the wandering adventurer that just strolls into their town and is able to help them achieve something or help them regain something that was lost. And sometimes it can be something as simple as a book, or something as monotonous or as tedious as a piece of paper, but you never know, man. Like, that is what makes the world come alive, because nothing in real life is smooth. Nothing transitions well. Hardly ever are you going to know when something's coming up. That's way down the line. So the beauty of vanilla is in its simplicity and is also in its chaotic design. So take advantage of that. Spent a lot of time on tip number 1, but I really wanted to drive that one home. Tip number 2. Add-ons. I've mentioned this in, I think, a couple of the other variations of these episodes, but add-ons are going to be a big help in Classic. Remember, all the information's out there. It's already been data mined over the 15 years it's been since Vanilla initially launched, so things like Questy are going to go a long way towards laying out where quests are, what your requirements are going to be, and exactly how far you are from each objective or from each, mob potentially can drop this item, and it can actually help you map out your routes more efficiently. So be sure to download your add-ons. Tip number 3. be sure to plan out routes ahead of time. I've already mentioned this in the previous tip, just kind of offhandedly, but to actually dedicate time off game, off Azeroth, just when you're, maybe waiting for, maybe you're at a restaurant and you're waiting on your order to show up, or if you're maybe, taking care of your, natural business in the mornings, whatever you might be doing to pass the time, take 5, 8, 10, 12 minutes to just open up an article, open up a guide, and just kind of sniff through it. Figure out what exactly is going to fit your playstyle best and what route you want to choose. There are so many guides out there, whether it's Joanna's or others, that are already predetermined, and you can look and say, you know what, while I see why they're doing this, I think I'd rather go to Loch Modan, or I see why they're not doing this, but I would rather experience Duskwood, or I would rather experience Stranglethorn Vale to the fullest. Decide what you want to do, regardless if it's for speed leveling purposes, story purposes, maybe just for solely for nostalgia purposes, because it's what you did 15 years ago. Whatever it might be, plan your route accordingly ahead of time while you're off game. That way you can make a plan and dive right on in. Tip number 4. Always be thinking 2 quests ahead, or 2 objectives ahead, whatever it might be. It may not even necessarily be a quest. It could just be objective, whether it's leveling a certain profession, or getting the a certain kind of pet, maybe getting a certain kind of pet ability, again from a hunter's perspective, or maybe if you're a mage, maybe it's perhaps doing the next stage in your class quest, or priests, or whatever. There are a lot of different things that are going to aid you as long as you think ahead. And I promise you, this all goes back to the original step in pre-plan your route and always be thinking 2 steps ahead. Tip number 5, and this one's going to be pretty obvious. Don't die. I can't believe I just said that. This is pretty obvious. Don't die. But but truthfully, honestly, this is a big one for Classic, because graveyard runs were a pain in the butt for Classic. I mean, you want to talk about a just complete one-shot kill for your momentum. Doing a 4 or 5, or maybe even as far as a 10-12 minute corpse run, depending on where you're at, that could really kill your momentum. I mean, it really can kill your momentum. So be smart, plan your routes, know where you're going, know what you're doing, and unless you're speed leveling, because I know a lot of speed levelers are going to completely disagree with me on this, but if you're just leveling and this is your first time playing Classic, you haven't really have a lot of great exposure outside of stress tests, maybe a beta or whatever, save your cooldowns for when you get into a bind. Okay, now speed levelers and everybody else will tell you burn your cooldowns as soon as they come up, blah 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 blah. I'm a fan of that idea as long as you know what you're doing. If you're confident in your skills and your abilities, sure, absolutely. If you know your limits, absolutely. But if you don't know your limits, save those cooldowns for those high pressure moments to help save your butt from dying and having that 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 minute corpse run. Tip number 6. First aid. Now, first aid is going to go a long way towards allowing you the ability to stay in the fights longer, keep pushing the limit, and be able to just pull more and more and more mobs one round after another. Regardless if you're a healer, let me tell you something that's going to be very beneficial for you as a healer. Not always healing yourself with your mana cost. Be smart about when and where and how you use your mana, because you may never know when you might need it and not have it. So it's better to utilize your bandages between pools when you can. If your health is down by a third, and you know that, you know what, throwing up a rank 1 lesser heal's not that big a deal, I can use it to heal me. But if your health is all the way down to, say, 1/3 left, maybe you've got 20% health left, whatever it might be, instead of throwing up, sacking a lot of mana for that big heal, go ahead and just throw a bandage on real quick, and then 1 more lesser heal, and then boom, you're off to the races. So Things like that can go a long way towards helping you manage your mana and allow you the opportunity to keep pushing the limit by sustaining higher mana without burning so much on healing yourself up front. So there's a lot more to this for specific classes, and I might make a video specifically about this. Hunters is a great example. Don't always use min pet to heal your pet. Don't always eat food for yourself. Bandage your pet when you can, and bandage yourself when you can, and try to limit the amount of food you eat, because the food is also more likely the same kind of food your pet uses to feed itself. So there's a lot of give and take there. So make sure you just balance between when and where to use food, when and where to use bandages, when and where to use min pet. A lot of things go into that. Tip number 7. This is a big one. This is my all-time favorite, and I haven't heard anybody mention this before. You're going to love this. Okay, so in Classic, a lot, and I mean a lot, of areas, zones, especially earlier on in the earlier leveling zones, are going to require you to go into caves. Okay? I know that the Night Elves have it, and Dwarves and Gnomes have it. And it's just unavoidable. You have to go into a cave at some point, unless you just completely bypass the quests, which is viable, because by the time you get into it, especially as Dwarf and Gnome, you're already level 4, and you can essentially leave Cold Ridge Valley by the time you're level 4. You might have to do just a level and a half or so of grinding on your way to Keranos, but it's not too terrible. However, if you're not willing to do that, or you don't want to do that, or you want to experience the fullness of the starter zones, here's a tip for you. Don't loot those mobs. Those mobs that you kill getting into the deeper portions of the cave, don't loot them entirely. Leave one item on them, or if you don't want to, don't loot them at all. You're not really missing a whole lot if you don't loot everything off of them. But on the occasion, they might drop a bag, they might drop a piece of gear. Classic has proven to us that drop rates for, whites and even some grays that have some real usefulness early on happens way more often than it on private servers. So I'm going to leave that decision up to you, whether or not you just want to completely avoid looting them at all, or just leave one item on them. It doesn't matter. As long as there's an item on the corpse, their despawn and re-aggro time is going to be significantly decreased. Matter of fact, on my dwarf, I've been able to go all the way in to the Frostman cave at the very beginning in Cold Ridge Valley, kill the troll I needed to kill in the deepest portion of the cave, and then run all the way back out, and every single corpse is still laying there. So it helps you avoid a lot of downtime, a lot of respawns. So pick and choose when you do this, because obviously, again, there's other places where you can kind of just run right through a set of mobs. But if you're having to get through an area and you know you're going to have to double back, think about not looting those mobs completely, and it'll decrease their despawn time and completely eliminate the fact that you may have to fight through them again. Tip number 8. Rested experience is going to be the king of classic questing, okay? Anytime you log off, make sure it's either at a capital city or an inn, okay? I'm not kidding about this. That little bit of extra, even if you log off for just a couple hours, that half a bar or a full bar that you get of rested experience can go a long way. Because believe you me, by the time you get to level 40, 50, so on and so forth, once you get into those last 10, 15 levels, it really makes a difference. Because I promise you, if you log off of the span of, say, a dozen times in those last 15 levels, and you get maybe a bar and a half, 2.5 bars of rest experience, by the time you get to level 60, that is probably equivalent, that rested experience has probably added up to either a full level or maybe even a level and a half. So do not mock this. Do not look past it. That rested bar is your friend. Take full advantage of it. Tip number 9. Hearthstones are a great asset to any type of gameplay. But in Classic, you only get the one, and it's on a 1-hour cooldown. That's it. That's it. Except for Shamans. I'm not sure if Shamans had their second Hearthstone. I don't believe they did, but if they did, comment down below. But for every other class, for sure, aside from mages with their ports, that one Hearthstone's all you got. It's on 1 hour cooldown. So make sure you spend it wisely. But here's a pro tip for you. In order to use your Hearthstone effectively, be sure you log out immediately after you use it or soon after, because when you log out, the cooldown for your Hearthstone will continue to tick. So if you know you're going to have to burn a Hearthstone really fast, you don't really want to use it, but you kind of have to. Maybe you're a hunter and you ran out of ammo and you're like, dang it, I'm screwed. I have to go all the way back, Hearth, come all the way back out here. But then I've got a quest turn and I got to go all the way back eventually anyway. All right, no big deal. Use it, get your ammo, go into the inn, shut it down for 45 minutes or so, log back in, go back, do your quest, and then you're able to Hearth back immediately after that. So, Hearthstones are effective, use them wisely, and if you need to, log off, take a break, go for a walk or for a run, go to the gym, do whatever you need to do, get a bite to eat, come back after about 45 minutes or an hour, and your Hearthstone cooldown will reset. Last tip, tip number 10. Dungeons are a lot of fun in Classic and go a long way towards not only helping you get experience faster if you group up with the right team, but in later levels, at actual level 60, you can actually utilize the reset extremely effective to increase your return on investment much better if you actually utilize the wings collectively. Let's say, for example, you're running Ubers, right? And you run Ubers and Ubers and Ubers and Ubers and Ubers. Yeah, you could probably run Ubers infinite number of times, because the 10-man variant that we're getting in Classic is probably going to take you about 15 to 25 minutes to do a full clear. I mean, that's no joke. I mean, unless everybody's like rocking like best in slot gear from Molten Core or something, you're probably not going to churn and burn through that very, very fast. So the fact that you get a limited number of resets per hour isn't going to be a problem. But to maximize your return on investment, run Ubers and then go run Elbers. You're right there. Why not? If there's somebody in your group that can utilize something that comes off of a certain boss, you don't even have to run the same boss. You don't even have to fight all the bosses in these dungeons. What if, say for example, you only need to get to the third boss in Elbers and the second boss in Ubers? What if that's all your group's looking for? Find a group that's looking specifically for that boss you're looking for, and then cycle through them, do both, reset, do both, reset. Now that you can churn and burn pretty quick. And if you're just doing it with Ubers or you're just doing it with Elbers, that's not all that effective. Find somebody that needs something from a first or second or third boss of the other wing of that same dungeon area, and churn and burn those. Not only will it help you make friends, but it'll also expand your group pool to people that can actually help fill in some gaps, because not everybody is going to want to run that same 2 or same 3 bosses of the same dungeon over and over and over and over and over. That can get pretty repetitive. It can get pretty boring. Mix it up a little bit. Add in Elbers and with Ubers, or if it's the main entrance wing of Strathome, add in Service Gate of Strathome. There's an infinite number of possibilities here. Same thing with other dungeons that are not necessarily, too far departed from each other. A prime example would be Swamp of Sorrows. Swamp of Sorrows, Sunken Temple, there are actually a few trinkets for certain classes that are actually pre-raid best in slot going into Molten Core, and even great swap trinkets for other classes going into Blackwing Lair. So that's another one that you might want to think about running repetitively with other classes. And if you've got a Warlock buddy that's strategically placed elsewhere, can get you a couple of summons and you can piggyback back and forth. If you have an alt Warlock or two that can actually help you piggyback back and forth, that's not a bad idea. Hearth, have a summoning Warlock set up, say for example, and have a couple of buddies with an alt Warlock, or a guildie with a Warlock that's, say farming ogres in Deadwind Pass, that could bring you dang near right on top of Sunken Temple pretty quickly, and you just rolled out of Ubers, or just rolled out of Elbers, or maybe you rolled out of BRD, something like that, and you don't want to make that trip all the way down there. That's alright. Log into your Warlock buddy and send him a whisper or whatever else. Say, hey, Can we get a portal? So while they're farming mats for their maybe for their raid, maybe for themselves, or for maybe just putting stuff in the auction now. Deadwind Pass is actually a pretty good gold farm. Find someone that can help you out and lend a hand, and I promise you, it will go a long way towards not only improving your quality of life at level 60, but a lot of these tools and tricks, especially with, you know, mass mob killing in AoE farming in dungeons at lower levels, and even the mid upper tier levels, can actually help amplify your leveling experience. You just have to find the right group of people who are willing to help you, but also be sure that you need to be giving as much, if not more, than you're asking of other people. Because by giving more, you'll receive more. I promise you. Alright guys, that's it. That's the 10 tips and tricks. Just a quick heads up. I'm going to be doing all my, all this week's videos back to back. Because I'm not streaming this week, so to make up for that, I'm going to be recording all these videos in one sitting, which is why my shirt's not going to change. So I'm not being lazy, I'm just trying to be efficient with my time. So with that being said, love you guys, stay kind to one another, continue to be salty, and Zera will see you in the next video.